Ready? Ready? Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for those in attendance tonight. At this time, we will do the roll call. Right at 6:30.
Mrs. Eichholz, she will be listening by teleconference tonight, I understand.
Yep.
Mr. Marks?
Here.
Mrs. Singh?
Here.
Mr. Summerall?
Here.
Mr. Tullis?
Here. Thank you, Mr. Davis. This time is there a motion to adopt the regular meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. At this time, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I do have two special guests, so I would like to invite to the stage to lead the Pledge of Allegiance with me tonight. If there's a Sadie and James Tullis out there, could you please come up? Sadie and James Tullis, please come forward.
Right. James, come on.
Come see Mr. Konecki on stage.
Okay, buddy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good job.
You're not leaving.
Thank you to our special guests there. We appreciate that.
Hey, buddy.
He's fine. Might want to put a fence there next year. At this time, Mr. Davis, any public commentary?
We have none at this time.
Excellent, thank you. At this, we will move into Mr. Konecki, recognition, correspondence, and announcements.
Thank you. Welcome, members and our guests tonight. They're listening in, and all of our guests in the audience. First, we have some recognition, correspondence, and announcements this evening. Pleased to announce both Indian Hill High School and Indian Hill Primary School have been awarded a combined nearly $200,000 in grants as part of the Ohio K-12 School Safety Grant Program. This is the third grant total awarded to Indian Hill School District, this year to enhance safety as a part of our current project. In May, Indian Hill Elementary School was awarded $100,000 in funds. These funds will be used to cover expenses associated with physical security enhancements such as security cameras, public address systems, automatic door locks, visitor badging systems, and exterior lighting as a part of our current project. So very excited about this grant program. Want to thank Mr. Nichols for putting some time and effort in, Mick Davis for the work they did, and our staff for the research, and our project team for the help to garner these grants. We want to celebrate the announcement of $15,000 in grants awarded to Indian Hill Elementary School and Indian Hill Primary School to enhance our science, technology, engineering, and math programs. The 22-23 Ohio STEM Learning Network OSLN STEM Classroom Grant Program awarded $5,000 to our elementary school to invest in robotics and $10,000 to our primary school to invest in technology that supports project-based learning and Botley 2.0 robots to assist our youngest braves in developing skills in coding language. Really excited about the advances that our teams at both buildings are making in their STEM culture. This is great evidence that they're doing the right work. The Ohio STEM Learning Network only gives these grants out to select school districts that are demonstrating STEM culture holistically. So we're very proud of the teams at the buildings that worked on these programs. Want to congratulate Indian Hill High School senior Joseph Kane and Kunal Ranjan and Pranav Rastogi. All three have been named semifinalists for the 2023 class of the Coca-Cola Scholars Program, moving on to the next round of the selection process to become a Coca-Cola Scholar and receive a $20,000 college scholarship. The three seniors at IHHS were selected from a pool of over 91,000 applicants from across the country based on their academic excellence, leadership, and service demonstrated in school and community activities. It's a very selective process to even get this far as a great achievement for those three seniors, so congratulations. I'd like to congratulate one of our staff, or two of our staff members from the elementary school, Betsy Henning and Amanda Sopko. They were recently published in ASCD's Educational Leadership Magazine. This is a national publication read by educators and leaders across the country. Betsy and Amanda featured information on students' self-directed learning and the use of our Go Time program, which impacts all of our students at the elementary school. It's a wonderful article if you get a chance to take a look. Congratulations to Betsy and Amanda. We'd like to congratulate our very own Dr. Melissa Stewart, who was recently featured nationally by All for Ed, Future Eddie, and AASPA for her work in school leadership, programming, and instruction, coaching, mentoring, and training of other leaders. This featured twice nationally in the last month. Dr. Stewart, congratulations. Thank you for all the work that you do. I know that she probably is not happy with me shining the spotlight on her at all, but she deserves that spotlight. We're excited to announce the Alpaugh Family Economics Center at the University of Cincinnati will honor Indian Hill Elementary School educator Betsy Henning as the 22-23 Personal Finance Educator of the Year. Betsy was selected for her long-standing commitment to delivering real-world financial education to our students at IHES. Betsy's stock market game program is a perennial powerhouse, and our IHES teams often finish in the top 10 statewide. Typically, we have multiple teams in the top 10 statewide. Betsy also was instrumental in bringing Family Financial Literacy Night to Indian Hill Elementary School the last few years, and in collaboration with the center, and has been a great partner to the center. This is a great example of one of our transformational community partnerships in this school district. Betsy will be presented with her award at TQL Stadium on April 6th, so we look forward to that, and congratulations to Betsy. It's well deserved. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Melissa Stewart for a strategic plan update.
Thank you. This is a really exciting time to talk about the strategic plan, and I'm really excited to share some of the updates with you. I want to start by talking about how we've worked so hard to make sure that the strategic plan is our plan. It's not my plan, it's not Kirk's plan, it's our plan, and we want to make sure that there's lots of opportunities for shared ownership. So we have over 75 staff members who are currently engaged by being leaders of the strategic plan by participating in the initiative teams. We have 10 initiatives, and each one of those is surrounded by teacher leaders who come together on a regular basis and talk about that initiative, and really are doing some esteemed work and research to determine what these initiatives will mean for us. We also have over 425 hours so far this year dedicated to each of those 10 initiatives to make sure that we really are researching them as robustly as we can. And finally, those 10 initiatives are really what's driving all of our professional learning. So we tried something new this year called Personalized Professional Learning. You'll hear us often abbreviated as PPL. And it was a real opportunity for teachers to have a menu of ways that they could evaluate their own learning and determine how they wanted to participate in their own professional learning. So this graph just shows these are all the different menu items that people chose to be involved with. And you can see that it's relatively, we didn't have any initiative that wasn't supported. We did not include streamlining communication as part of the menu item because we have the fabulous Mrs. Heather Higdon, who is running that initiative for us. So our teachers were highly engaged in the other 9 initiatives. And I think one of the ideas that is so encouraging is the idea of STEM, and the fact that you would really see that there were people involved in that in all 4 buildings, ranging from people who were really familiar to it to people who were really new, thinking about what STEM could mean in their particular field that often isn't related to science, technology, engineering, and math. So our teachers have done a phenomenal job engaging in this process.
Can I say one comment about this? The creating new spaces piece as well. I think what you're going to see in our upcoming board meetings in January and February is the evidence of our faculty input involvement, especially when we talk about the design of our new buildings and the furnishings that will go into them, which we'll talk much more about next month. But I was thrilled at how many staff members were involved in that initiative and really thinking about teaching and learning design for now and the future.
So now that we've wrapped up the menu items related to personalized professional learning for this year, it's time for us to really take a reflective glance and have multiple ways that our staff members can share ideas with us. What's working for them, what's not working for them, as we start to engage in looking at what PPL will look like for the 23-24 school year. So here's just 3 little quotes that we wanted to grab that really are able to show the qualitative data as well as the quantitative data about how our teachers are engaging in their own learning. When it comes to that learning, there's some really powerful things that are happening for us as a school district that really emphasizes K-12 alignment. And this is a really great example of that. You'll see in the small picture to the right, this is the design process that was first developed by Indian Hill Primary School as they engaged in their work around STEM student agency. That has now transitioned all the way over to the bigger picture, which is the design process that the high school has now adopted. And you can see all of the similarities. So through the strategic plan, it's really exciting to see the alignment that's taking place from building to building to building, so that when our students go through our organization, they will have an opportunity to build upon each other. And it won't be that they're starting new just because they transition to a new building. What they've learned in one building will be connected to what's happening in the next building.
So this is a great example. A lot of times parents will ask us in the community, why is this so important? The design process, what is all this about as we're communicating about the strategic plan? This is how students are learning. This is all about the how. How are our students learning K-12 to tackle problems and find multiple solutions to problems? It's the how. And the why, of course, is the exciting piece that we're always worried about, making sure people understand why Indian Hill. That's been one of our themes this year. And the what is what our teachers are currently researching. But this is the how, and our students understand this language.
I think when we look at the previous slide, when we look at these design cycles, the other part is we can feel really proud as a district that I feel we're on the cutting edge of looking at what's happening in education. And I don't know if you've seen recently, there's lots of articles that have been published about artificial intelligence and how it's going to impact what happens in schools by being able to do things like using artificial intelligence to design essays, as an example. So for our students, we've been talking for a long time about having them do work that's not easily determined by a Google answer. This is it, and we're already there. So thinking about what that looks like and how that's aligned and what that means for our students when they graduate and leave us makes us feel really excited about the future. We also were able to solidify what our communication cycle would look like, and as you can see, it's also really important that we are constantly in an iterative process. So as initiative teams are keeping students at the center of all their conversations, they are able to present information to community, staff teams, agency partners, and leadership teams who then provide feedback, give that back to the initiative teams. They work on the next iteration of their ideas, and so on. It goes back and forth and back and forth. Our worst fear would be that when we get to the point of full implementation of an initiative, that there would be some teacher who would say, well, I don't know anything about this. This is the first time I've heard about it. So having a very defined communication flow is a way that we can make sure that not only people are informed, but that everybody has a voice through the entire process.
And I'd just like to say again, what we went through last year, we had such a fabulous turnout of stakeholder involvement, community members, parents, agencies, businesses, and students, of course. And as we move into 2023, we'll be bringing back together some of our steering committee members and advisory for a kind of a look back and a look ahead. We'll facilitate a great meeting that you'll be hearing about soon from Dr. Stewart. And I'm really excited about what people think about what we're showing you tonight and how they've been engaging and interacting and understanding the strategic plan as we began to implement this past year. And 75 faculty members being involved in a district this size just in year one is incredible. We owe a huge debt of thanks to our world-class faculty members for the time they put in, and it's been time well spent. That's a huge number, and I'm sure it will grow here at Indian Hill. So congratulations to everybody that's involved. I know Julie's here tonight, but all of our teachers.
So we also want to make sure that we are continuously sharing information. So I just want to give credit to Mr. Konecki and how he's really kept the strategic plan at the front of every conversation that we've had. And an example of that is that he has a monthly update that he provides to all of our staff members, and there is always information about progress within the strategic plan. We also have been really partnering well with Heather Higdon, our Chief Communication Officer, who has stayed very involved in the process and is thinking continuously about how to proactively include as many channels as possible so that people can receive information about the ongoing progress at any point. Our initiative teams will have another round of meetings coming up in January. And we have made sure to dedicate our staff meetings with the teachers at least once a month to information about the strategic plan. And on a quarterly basis, we meet with our teacher leadership team, known as the Brave Leadership Team meeting. So about 50 teachers meet in the room, and we spend almost the entire evening speaking about the strategic plan and gaining their feedback.
In terms of celebrations, one of our goals when we communicate about the strategic plan was that we would communicate the plan locally, regionally, statewide, and nationally. I'm really proud to say that our faculty and staff and our strategic plan have been featured by all 7 major publications and social media outlets that are covered nationally in public schools across America this year. Recently, we presented at the Ohio School Board Association conference, and it was amazing how many schools responded to the presentation. Dr. Owens, Dr. Stewart did a great job, and we have heard from over 15 school districts that want to know about our model. I think that speaks to the work that our entire community did to put this plan together. Made me very proud, and you should be very proud.
I just wanted to share a few examples of what it looks like as our teachers continue, as our teachers and our administrators continue to share examples of what this looks like in the classroom. In my years that I have been here, I have never seen work be as aligned as it is now, where in every classroom you can go and have an engaging conversation about what does the strategic plan look like in action in that classroom. It's really exciting. So next steps for us. We would like to bring together community members that were highly involved in the formation of the strategic plan. Those would be the people who served on the steering team and the advisor team in January, February, to have a meeting in order to present all this information and gain their feedback and help us to think about the next steps. Round 3 of the initiative teams is coming up, and we are in the midst of planning for what does professional learning look like for all of our teachers for 2023 and 24. In closing, there's a few people that I have to mention. Dr. Kim Given could not be here tonight, but she has been so focused on supporting this strategic plan and making sure that we're really organized in all of our materials and our meetings, and to make sure we're really clear in all of our communication. So I'm really thankful for that. I want to thank Julie Pfeiffer as well. She's been such a great partner and someone that we can bounce all these ideas off of and ask what she thinks about PPL, and she's always right there to give us some honest feedback. So really appreciative for all the people who are here to support this work. It really feels like it's our plan.
And I'd like to take a minute just to say thank you to all of our administrators. I think we have asked over the last few years for our building principals and assistant principals to get involved in different ways. One of the great things about the levels of engagement we had with this strategic plan is that assistant principals and head principals have been engaged at every level along the way and are having weekly meetings not only with each other but with their own building leadership teams, monthly going through this district leadership teams to really talk about that common language and alignment and ultimately helping lead the way. Really appreciate the work of all of our principals.
If I could, I just want to thank you, Dr. Stewart, for the wonderful update, and we appreciate all the work of you and the team. I love your enthusiasm and leadership on this. And this is what makes Indian Hill such a great school district. And what you guys are doing here is going to change this for many years to come. So thank you. This is very, very cool stuff.
Thanks.
I echo that. Thank you. Awesome.
Okay, few points that I noted, which are really outstanding. It is just amazing to see that 75 teachers are actively involved in this process, which is very, very nice. Like the idea of aligning between all 4 buildings, because it is very important what happens at the primary, they move on to the elementary, there should be some kind of connection. So it's a great idea of aligning all 4 buildings together. One thing I noticed that, and I have said this before, while we were doing this strategic plan, the students are always the center of every design, every discussion. And it is great to see that it is still the same. Students are still the center of every design that has been created. Every educator has a voice in this, which is great, because the more people involved, the more good ideas that come in. So that, I thought, was a brilliant idea. And it's nice to see that finally the district is getting the local and national recognition, which I think is not only good for our district, but also for our students when they go out after they graduate. So great job. It's really exciting. Can't wait to meet other community members in the January or February meeting to see what feedbacks they have. But this is very exciting. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. It is just amazing. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank you because you were also one of the architects of this entire plan. You were at every meeting when we were developing it.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that Nancy and Nikki were involved as steering committee members, and moving forward, want to keep you involved and appreciate all that work on everybody's part. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to an operations update and turn it over to Mr. Nichols.
Thank you. As I invite the operations team to come on up, I'll just share a couple of quick high-level updates. Here at the high school, middle school, I think our progress is fairly evident out there. You've seen the building come up nicely, and really you can see the full structure all the way from here over to the old kitchen, which is being renovated right now. So that's exciting work, and you're starting to see here in the front of this building the sheathing go up where we're enclosing, and that work will continue. So we're progressing nicely at the middle school. Over at the elementary school, again, a block building has went up very quickly over there. Roofing is going on, and it should be complete relatively soon. We've been doing a lot of work to tie in the existing building to the new building, and so that work is almost complete. Our friends at the elementary school did a masterful job of letting us close partially the hallway nearest to the cafeteria, and they had to walk around to get to some other locations, so they'd have to walk all the way around the corridors to get there, but they managed it beautifully, and we appreciate their patience, but we're about done with that. And then at the primary school, again, work continues. We're going to take full advantage of winter break on all sites, and specifically at the primary school, we're going to be able to get some fire suppression done in the gymnasium there. We're going to be able to paint some fire suppression we put in last year in some of the building interiors. So work will continue through winter break, and we'll make some good progress there. So we're really looking forward to the new year and seeing things progress even further. But at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Paytek from MSA, Holly McLean from MCS, and Chris Soto from Skanska.
Good evening. Thanks for having us again this evening for providing an update on the construction projects. Mr. Nichols kind of gave you an overview of what people are starting to see out on site, and tonight we just wanted to provide some updates when it comes to budget and cost. A couple items I think that we're looking for some approval from the board this evening on as we get through it. Initially, the slide we're going to show up here right now is just giving you an overview of the budget and the finances of the projects. On the left is where the budgets have been. The big bucket being obviously the bond levy that's funding the majority of the work. That's the red box of the $77 million, and a couple other smaller buckets of dollars. The energy projects that have been ongoing for some time, and the lease purchase there at the top. And on the right, in conjunction with that, is then where a lot of the dollars have been going in the expenditures, which we'll get into more detail here in a minute. The big one being the blue, which are the projects that have been approved and encumbered, mostly the middle, the elementary, and the primary schools. And at the top, there are a few other projects that we're looking for approval this evening, and then some other additional contingencies and dollars that will continue to be there for the district to tap into as needed in the project team as the project moves forward. So if you go to the next one, Kurt. Just another way to look at it, again, on the left, showing the budget overview of where the budget dollars are coming from, the full 89 million plus it's going towards the projects. And then again, on the right, the different pieces and how it breaks down, the biggest one being all the GMPs and the work that have been encumbered, and we'll talk through the high school and transportation here a little bit more in a minute. And then at the bottom, what comes into the contingency dollars, which are those dollars, like I say, that are meant to be there for unforeseens and as a project proceeds to tap into. Some of those have been approved, and there's some pending ones we'll talk through this evening, and then additional dollars that'll continue to be there as the project moves forward. Has been kind of developed early on in the project to make sure that they can keep moving forward and that the dollars will be there to finish the projects out. So with that, Holly's going to go through a little bit some of the details on the contingency dollars, and then Chris will go through some of the details on the GMPs.
Thanks, Chris. Good evening. Looking at this, we tried to break it down into 3 sections here. We've got 2 different buckets of contingency. One of them is owner contingency, which we've been holding throughout the project, through the budget and the process. The other one is CMR contingency, which is already encumbered money within the contracts under Skanska. And those are 4 separate items that can be used for certain types of changes with scope gaps, if they need to accelerate a schedule, and some contractual items where they can use that.
Holly,
yes, sir.
we had a question before. Maybe you could just point out for the public who are paying attention in this meeting, because there are 2 kinds of contingency here, could you provide a general example of when owner contingency money is consumed so that anybody paying attention in the community can understand versus CMR contingency?
Okay. Well, there's a couple different ways it can be consumed. Some of those are owner requested. As we start to get through the process, we start to see things coming up. You can tell where certain things are going if there are requests along the way. Additional items for playground is one example. And sometimes there's errors and omissions. So no set of drawings and documents are going to be coordinated and perfectly. We've got so many different groups and individuals working through a project and so many different components that coordination and items between there, we have to tighten those up. So there could be some errors and omissions, and we've got a certain balance that we try to keep throughout the process on that. There's also field conditions, unforeseen conditions. So we go into the ground, we find a portion of the building out here that and soil that doesn't have the right makeup to hold the foundation. Well, we need to pull some of that out. We need to put some of those concrete piers in. We have certain measurements in the field that may be not consistent with where the drawings were originally. So items like that throughout the process, this is a normal thing through construction. This is why we budget that money to begin with. So
Thank
as
you.
we go through
That's
there.
exactly what I was hoping to hear, some examples for people. I appreciate that.
Yep. So looking through this right now, as we look through the project, this takes you through the end of November. We're looking at project completion, and this is just the overall budget by what has been spent already. We're usually running about 5%-ish behind of where the actual dollars are with different contingencies and things like that as we look at that, because we're only doing payments once a month for those items. So we're usually running about 5% financial completion, different than what sometimes the schedule is. The owner contingency, we're running about 50-50. Our owner contingency bucket started with 3.8 million. We have 420,000 of that has been approved as changes to date. Pending changes, which you'll see some of those which need decisions tonight and in the next couple months as we go forward, are captured in there. with a remaining contingency balance with owner contingency of 1.9 right now. CMR contingency, as we go through the process, we do have certain audit points where some of that money can come back into the owner's hands if it's not utilized. We have a check-in early next year for a portion of that, and then closer to the end of the project. So some of that money, if it's not utilized, which it's in their right to use, we go through different checkpoints at that time when it is used, but if it's not used, then a portion of that comes back to the owner. So if you go to the next slide, we'll talk through some of the two of the GMPs that are on your agenda tonight for approval are the high school GMP. You see our budget from the previous slides above of 3.5 million. Transportation GMP budget was 386, almost 387,000. The GMPs, which were bid and have been drafted by Skanska, came in around 3 million for the high school and 3.77 for, or 377,000 for the transportation building.
Holly, that takes. Sorry, go ahead there. Sorry, a quick question, and this is
Yes.
a good question. I think this is the first time in at least the 12 months I've been involved in this board that we're seeing some GMPs coming in below the budget. Are we seeing a change in the market? Is it, how did you achieve those savings?
Some of that was from reacting to some of those market conditions that we saw up front at the beginning of the project. A lot of that was. And we had to look back to the project team with the designers, with your staff. We combed through the documents and looked at what was really needed in these projects. So it was a balance of understanding how much money we needed after we got some initial shocks from the market, to also really sharpening our pencils with design and understanding what we're putting into these buildings, and making sure that we were coming in under those budgets for sure.
And those GMPs take us to 100%, correct, on those, roughly 100% on those two projects?
Yes, those are,
the 3 million.
that's for those two projects.
Okay.
But there's still allowances built in that are yet to be finalized, correct? Or have we made all of our allowance selections?
There's one on the high school, is that correct?
There's an allowance included in the high school. Overall, project-wide, we encumbered about 90% of the allowance funds. So there's still...
That's really what I was asking, thanks. That's the reason just asking that mitigates the risk of future spikes going forward. I think we're finally getting to the point where we pretty much know the cost, and that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, Mr. Tullis, for the public to paying attention to this, and this is a great example. Once these GMPs, pending approval from the board, we move forward into a new phase of the project where we've mitigated a lot of the initial risk of the project, and now we're into a new phase.
So really on that first slide that Chris presented, when we look at that bar chart at the beginning, we're turning that into blue. We're working our way to get everything contracted up, to make sure everything is encumbered that we need encumbered. The remaining portion is going to be the owner contingency at the end. So to look at that variance, our current owner construction contingency of the 1.9, we had about $500,000 of savings from those two GMPs. So that rolls back into the owner contingency, which gives us 2.4 as our balance at this point. Any questions on that?
A question for you.
Yes, sir.
So when you look at the contingencies going forward, do you have any other good guys going to be coming down the pike as far as what you just presented to us this
Have
evening?
any other what? I'm sorry.
Good guys as far as positive variances for us?
Positive variances. We don't have that much more to.
As far as additional contingencies, do you see anything else? Do you see trends continuing in the last phases of this construction?
There's only smaller portions of allowances that were built in previously that could possibly come back, and then the only other avenue would be that CMR contingency if that pans out.
And Holly,
otherwise, as we encumber, that kind of caps our ability to bring back in $500,000.
To maybe take a step further with Craig's question, I know you mentioned this previously, but when you said early next year, when is it that the board would expect to hear from Skanska about that bucket of contingency? Next board meeting?
I would say, well, we were going to discuss it in January.
Okay.
So I would say I was going to get to February.
Thank you.
That's all right. I would say the February board meeting then.
Holly, in terms of, I mean, from the pre-work and then today, what I'm hearing you say, just to make sure I'm clear, is that from the dollars that we need to encumber, right, once we complete, assuming we approve the GMPs for transportation to high school, those will basically, besides allowances, will be basically at 100% encumbered, minus the allowances, correct? Is that right? And then is it our assumption that some of the allowances I think we started looking at, right, in terms of what we're going to do there, that we're on target with those allowances? Or where are we at in terms of we've budgeted, you know, X amount, obviously, for different allowances for different projects? Where are we at in terms of knowing, when do we expect that we'll know the delta on those allowances? Is that in terms of the overall bucket, right? So if the overall bucket of the allowances is X, the vast majority of that we'll know where we're at. When does that look like?
The largest chunk of the owner direct purchase allowances is coming through the loose furnishings.
From the furnishings.
And like Mr. Konecki said, that is early next year when we're looking at that. So in January, I think we're doing our final check before that comes.
That was going to be my next question. Was, it seemed to me the only big ticket item left, relatively speaking, is the furniture. I know, Melissa, you and others, Jim, I'm sure, have spent a ton of time. Can you give us just a quick update on kind of where that budgeted number came from? When do we actually buy that, place that order?
We're going to be sharing with board members resources in the next 2 to 3 weeks that you're going to get preloaded before the next 2 board meetings. And we're going to be doing some presentations where we really dive into all of that because that has been an ongoing project for the last 13 months that's now kind of wrapping up, and that is the last big bucket for the board. But along with what Holly was saying here, you'll see on the next couple slides some of the timeline for board decision making that goes through February, and we're going to kind of go through those line item by line item. And then the furnishings, of course, you're going to have time to review those budgets. The good news is, and I think I can speak for Jim and Melissa, we're on our timeline and we're within our budget, our allotted budgets. So that's the good news. Is that satisfied for now, Barry?
Yeah, that's it. There's a joke in there I'm not going to make.
All right.
Okay.
Well, moving forward, I'm going to have Chris Soda come up and talk through some of the pending change orders and some of those decisions.
Good evening, board. So this chart up here lists the change orders that are up for approval at the meeting tonight. I'll run quickly through these. Feel free to ask any questions. So first on the list is the coil room prep, installing a recessed floor. So what this does is it prepares the coil room to be able to be used for performance spaces at a later date. So that investment of $33,000 is relatively minor in the grand scheme of the project, but if this work were to be performed at a later date after the building is occupied, it'd be much more expensive. So that's why we recommend proceeding with that at this time. We also have 2 change orders for playground allowances. So the playgrounds at the elementary and primary school have exceeded the allowance budget by $25,000 at the elementary school and by about $47,000 at the primary school. So since we're exceeding the budget and we're over by more than $25,000, it's up to the board to approve these change orders.
Chris, just
Yes.
to interrupt briefly, I think it's important for people paying attention to the public as we look at some of these things tonight. Some of them make sense, right? Like a floor. When it came to the playground, when it comes to things like theater packages, our teams had to do a lot of research to not only price out what these items would run. So for example, a modern contemporary playground, it's not just the pieces of equipment. In order to make these playgrounds state-of-the-art and all access, we had to learn a lot about surfaces and how people can access modern playgrounds. And so when you see the variance in some of these prices, to me, they make common sense based on the research we've done. And that research taught us a lot about the pricing as we went through these exercises with the team, including staff and students over the last year, to dream up and then really measure out great playgrounds.
I think that's an important point, because I know that it's the team, it's been important to make sure no one feels marginalized, that we look at 100% of our total student population, and having access for all is critical. So I appreciate that. One question, Chris, maybe you could share on the controls package for the $950,000, just for the public. Can you walk through that, because that's a big number? Obviously, we want to have state-of-the-art controls, but just explain what the controls are, why we made that, why you're asking for that decision, so that the public can understand, why that makes sense from a architectural perspective.
The entire controls package is worth about $1.5 million and change. And what that controls package does, it controls the mechanical equipment in all 4 buildings, and it optimizes the energy consumption. At the start of the project, or earlier this year, a certain amount of funds were included within the CMR contract. I think it was around $600,000. The remaining portion of that work was originally going to go to a different company that had previously done work for the school district. There was a decision made to just put all that work into our contract, so that would be considered a change order to our contract. So that $1.5 million or so was reduced by $600,000. That was already included in our contract, with a net result of about $950,000.
And what, just for layman's terms, what is the main benefit to the school, the operations, to our energy budget or energy spend for having updated modern controls?
Sure, it's energy efficiencies, so savings on utility bills, conserving energy. So I think that fits within the general concept of sustainability for the school district.
Do we have an ROI on that in terms of payback?
I'm not familiar with the ROI. The mechanical engineer could answer that better, Moats Engineering.
I mean, my understanding on the controls, and obviously we can have those folks, but my understanding of the controls is, it's things like the efficiency of our HVAC, right? When our heat's coming on, when it's coming off, how it's moderating temperatures.
Yeah.
Right? It's sort of being a little more sensitive to that. Same thing with our lighting and so forth, correct?
Yeah, it's thermostats, it's CO2 sensors, so the air quality in the building, so constantly bringing in fresh air or bringing fresh air when it's needed.
And Chris, it's all about controlling everything from one central plant, right?
That's
for the
correct,
whole campus,
yes.
not
Yes.
separate units.
Yep, so this package would impact all 4 buildings plus the central utility plant here at the middle school and high school campus.
And the other piece to my understanding is not only is it around the utility bills, right, in terms of heating, cooling, and so forth, but also the life expectancy of our HVAC system, right? That if we're more efficient, it gives us a longer life cycle out of that product, which then goes into the capital budgeting and so forth. Is that right?
Yeah, and the district has a mix of old equipment and new equipment. Likewise, there are a lot of old controls and devices scattered throughout the building that are frankly at end of life. So this stays ahead of that. It saves on maintenance long term as well, knowing that those costs are coming up later.
So one thing I would like to point out is that we look at those different buckets on page 1. You'll see where the energy project had about $330,000 left. That was earmarked for replacement of controls in the high school and the elementary school. Both of those control systems were 15 years or plus in age. We really did a lot of studying on that with the help of Moats Engineering to determine that it would be more it would be more beneficial for the district to put all of the equipment onto new controls as opposed to trying to update those 15-year plus controls and then having different products from those products as opposed to the products we have now. So you got a lot of different systems talking to each other. You got a lot of know-how that our mechanics would have to be able to manage. So it was decided as the project started that we would use that bucket to get new controls as opposed to trying to update those old end-of-life controls. And then we also, as part of this project, used some general fund money to sort of supplement that as well to make sure we had brand new controls throughout the district.
Thank you.
I think the remaining item on here would be the replacement wood flooring at the stage at the primary school. Not sure the last time you folks have been on that stage, but it is rotted through and it's in really sad shape. So this change order would include costs to remove that wood floor and replace it in entirety. So last point here is that all these change orders, these costs have already been factored into the remaining contingency. So that $1.9 million already accounts for all these items listed on this page. These change orders do not increase the overall project budget. Like I said, it's all baked in already. Okay?
We also, when we looked at the auditorium, there was a lot more, obviously it was rotted, but also looking how we can make it more accessible into certain parts, and that was part of that process too for some of our
yeah, well, the
children.
project already included a ramp up to that stage. Yeah, so this does take a holistic approach so that stage is ready to go for the students. All right, sneak preview for the next board meeting. There are 4 change orders that will be coming towards the board. These decision dates are for January, are important to maintain flow in the construction process and maintain pricing. The first 2 are allowance overages for the theater and stage packages at the primary school and elementary school. So this includes theater lighting, rigging, and stage curtains. That's typical to both of those schools. Then we also have 2 alternates at the high school. So this is a potential additional work at the high school, mostly in the wrestling area, replacing an entrance door, improving the safety and security of a rear door in that wrestling hallway, and then adding some windows. That's the wrestling area storefronts, that add some windows in that hallway to brighten up the space.
So I'd like to just, again, interrupt briefly, Chris, and explain 2 different examples here, along with what you saw on the first page with the coral room recessed floor that you would consider tonight, board members, and the wood flooring of the stage at the primary. Our faculty and staff have done an amazing job of working with our project team to not only give input and ideas and share feedback along the way, but also do research and homework. And I also want to give credit to MSA and the consultants they've worked with, and Skanska and the consultants they've brought in. When we talk about things like theater packages, from people like Denny Dupps and Eric Samini to the consultants that our project team are working with, we have set a standard and told them, go out and find out what the best are doing and then get us the best pricing to put together the best packages. And I feel like our teams have done that homework. And so while you see those numbers there for future consideration on the theater packages, we're talking about theater packages that not only meet the standards of Indian Hill's performing arts programs, but that are also the most efficient in the pricing and the homework and the research done by the best consultants in the country looking at the best schools. To me, I think that's really important for our public to understand that there's a lot of research and time that's gone into these numbers. Same with the athletic areas and Mr. Phelps working with our partners.
And I also would like to discuss the formatting of this document real quickly. We decided to put it together this way to give both the board and the public the sense of just how much money is left and available. Sometimes these change orders do seem very daunting. We just want to make sure that the public's aware that it's part of the project. It's just simply something that hasn't been included in the original designs. Therefore, we're using that contingency. We're staying within our allowed pot of money. And then also we've put in a slide to be able to show what the change orders are coming up pending on the most current meeting, and then also things in the future, which is that slide. So that way the board can keep up to date with what some of the things they're going to be looking at and the information that's going to go out from us between now and the next meeting. So you'll see this, as we move forward, this document's going to change. We will remove the slide that has all of tonight's GMPs and change orders, provided those are voted through. And then those will go into the blue part on the first page of that bar chart, and you'll continue to see the movement and how those budgets are working together. If we would receive another grant, for example, that would be more money on the revenue side, and that would be more money that we could put to contingency to potentially pay for something else down the road.
I think it's also important to note that those are all student impacting pieces, right? That these change orders are things that we know that are going to directly impact the kids that come and spend their time in our school.
Yeah, and I want to give some credit to not only our board members, but Mr. Davis and Jim, Melissa, and the team, because that's been the number one thing we've talked about whenever we look at these change orders is how many students will this impact, and keeping that question central to the decision making.
And I think it's also important to not only think about it in terms of how many students are impacted, but for example, the controls buyout is going to lengthen the life of our buildings that we're building right now. And it's also going to help, we won't have to pay for these items 5-10 years from now when the controls now get to the end of their life. So there's some savings in that as well. So we're not only looking at number of students impacted, but the life of these buildings and making sure we're building things that are going to last for generations.
I think, Mick, you know this better than I do, but for me, the most important part of this is as you go to set your budgets year in, year out, look at these 5-year forecasts, we're eliminating the issue we had with the middle school of these massive surprises out of left field, or I guess we should have expected it with the old middle school, but major hits to our daily operating budget that we'd rather be spending on teachers and on student programs versus those types of things.
And again, this will give us a reset on all of those items, so it's going to allow us to produce a document once this project's complete for the next 5, 10, 20, 30 years of all of those necessary things to keep our facilities modern and up to date.
Well, I think it's finally, and then I'll stop making comments, but I think it's important to recognize like the effort that the team does. Mr. Nichols, Mr. Konecki mentioned it earlier, but the $300,000 that we just received, not every district, got the level of funding that we got for school safety. And the forward thinking, I know that that's been something that you and I specifically have talked about extensively, is school safety, and that the district is constantly looking out to say, where can we get money and grants and so forth, that we're going to make those decisions to put the safety of our kids first, regardless. But if we can get funding elsewhere that doesn't have to be taken out of our budget, that's huge. So I want to put an extra asterisk to that piece.
And I think to add on to that, Nolan, is the fact that now we're taking $300,000 that we can use for things that impact students. And that's the impact that those grant dollars have. Every dollar we can save that comes from a grant that we can put into the facilities, now we can upgrade something or create something else that will impact students for years to come.
Any other questions for the project team?
I will say the playground design was reviewed by 2 people in my household who had a particular interest in them, and they were well received. So excited to see that come to fruition.
That's passing the eye test with our students.
The rocket ship looking thing in the primary school was a big hit.
Anything else, project team members?
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you guys as always.
Okay, continuing on with our agenda, Mr. Tullis, thank you all for the presentations this evening. That was a lot of information, but really important. Letter I has a first reading of our Board of Education meeting dates for the years 23-24 school years. Board members, if you could just look at those closely over the next 30 days, please, and give us any feedback prior to our organizational meeting.
Thank you.
Moving into the
superintendent's report.
So under letter A, 7A, we have
Hey, Kirk, one thing real quick on your report. I did notice there was a clerical error that items 1 and 2 of item A were originally under item B. I have fixed those on the live agenda. and move those overnight field trips up into the correct area.
Thank you, sir.
No problem. I just want to, if somebody has an old agenda, I just want to make sure they understand where those items are.
Sure.
So
Thanks for calling that out publicly.
7A, items 1 and 2 include the approval of a couple of overnight field trips for some of our teams moving forward. Letter B is a resolution that we have to approve every 3 years for our representative to the Great Oaks Governing Board, Mr. Tim Sharp. There's a resolution attached, board members, for your consideration again. Mr. Sharp has served our board faithfully as our representative for years. Does a good job with that.
I would just note on that, I had the chance to meet Mr. Sharp last week, and he expressed his strong desire to continue this job, and that's great to have his participation, and very much appreciated his efforts on that.
Letter C is some personnel actions, tuition reimbursements, professional meetings. There are approved lists under 1 for some personal service contracts. These are for some of our classified staff members. Under number 2, some approval of retirements and resignations. And I don't think we have an addendum, do we, Mr. Davis? No. So looking at, if there are no questions, approval for 7 items A through C to C.
I'll make a motion to approve items 7A through 7C to C, I guess, with the note that there's a lot in there around transportation, and as a family with bus riders, our bus drivers do an unbelievable job, and they're just pretty darn impactful in terms of how much they take care of our kids, and at least that's been our experience. So I want to give a shout out to them and the leadership behind them.
I know as people read this, they'll see Nick Darnell on there, and he is loved across the district. Many of us will know that if your child, first day of school, comes out of the building and they don't know what bus they ride, all they have to do is say their name, and he, in his mind, can tell you what bus to get on. He's not leaving us, but he is going to transition to driving more, and it's what he loves. And so we really appreciate all he does. But if anybody sees this, Nick's not leaving us. He's just going to do something a little bit different, and he loves being with the kids and driving. So we're excited for him to make that transition.
Second.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Konecki. Mr. Davis, Treasurer's Report.
Under my report for this evening, I have to approve the minutes of the November 15, 2022 regular meeting, approve the financial reports for month ending November 30th, 2022. There are 2 contracts I'm hoping to approve for this evening. The first is for student services, key behavior services, AB consultation and implementation. And then they give their rates there. And then under item 2 is BSN Sports. This is a contract that will not cost the district any, but I wanted to make sure I brought it up to the board's attention and get their approval. BSN, in conjunction with Nike, will be giving the district quite a bit of money to enter into this contract. It will provide for new uniforms over the next 1 to 5 years. We can also get some things such as flags that have Indian Hill's name on them. We can get rugs. We can do all kinds of things with the money that's in this. Something else that's in there, we can also get discounts when we reach certain levels of funding. In the near future, if there's talk of redoing weight rooms. We could potentially reach that threshold and get some items discounted and get some more, a lot more bang for our buck, so to speak, when we go to do those things. So it's a fantastic contract for the district. We're really excited to do it. Nike is just getting back into public school districts after getting out of this market for some time, and Indian Hill was one of their first choices of being able to enter into the contract with them. Item D is the approval of the 2023 OSBA membership. This includes electronic subscriptions for briefcase and school management news. That's a cost of $9,610. I must make this one notice to the board because OSBA does do lobbying activities, therefore it must be board approved. Item E is to approve the contracts that we looked at in the construction update we saw. There are 2 GMPs in there. There are 11 change orders. The reason that's more than what you saw up on the screen is that the controls are actually broken out by building instead of one large sum. Item F is to accept the donations. We had one from the Greater Foundation Procter & Gamble for the Robotics Club, $2,200. The IH Boosters Association gave their second half of the 2023 Arts and Athletic Discretionary Funds, $12,500 for each of arts and athletics. And the IH Foundation, the Hatfield Fund, donated for our senior trip for scholarships, $1,044.91. As always, we appreciate the donations that continue to fund the things that make our school district great, and we always appreciate those donations.
Just a quick comment about our partners before we move on to the end of this report. All three of our partners have continued working graciously on the Braves Helping Braves Fund that was begun during the pandemic and have continued to provide assistance, I believe this year, for up to 29 families during the holidays and helping to continue to promote and raise funds that directly impact our children. Really appreciate the fact that all of our partner organizations continue to work on the Braves Helping Braves Fund. And obviously we benefit every time that a partner makes a donation. So again, want to thank all of them for all of their work to support the district.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for letters A, B, C, D, E, and F. Have I missed anything?
That covered them.
I'm sorry?
That covered all the letters. Can we get a second, please?
Second that motion.
All right. Mr. Summerall?
Yes.
Mr. Marks?
Yes.
Mrs. Singh?
Yes.
Mr. Tullis?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mick, as always. The next item, we need to elect a president pro tem to serve as the board from January 1st as I get booted out of office at midnight on the 31st, just through the first board meeting, organizational meeting in January of next year.
So I make a motion to elect Mr. Tullis.
Nolan, point of order. You just need to nominate. There's no motions with this, so just a nomination.
Get it right.
Thanks for setting me up there.
No problem.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Tullis to serve as the pro tem for the next month.
I second that.
We just need to know if there's any other nominations. Hearing none, I'll take a roll call and just name the person you would like to vote for. Mr. Marks?
I normally would abstain, but I'm going to go ahead and vote for Mr. Tullis at this juncture.
Mrs. Singh?
Oh, sorry. Mr. Beatelis?
Mr. Summerall?
Mr. Beatelis.
Mr. Tullis?
Nolan. I guess, joking, I guess myself.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, board members? No? With that, thank you, everybody, for everything, project team particularly. We were talking earlier that it's pretty exciting to see the actual structures coming out of the ground and what they're really starting to take shape. The community is feeling that excitement, and it's going to be a fun next few months, really seeing this project get wrapped up. Kirk, Melissa, Jim, Mick, thank you guys for everything. Julie, thank you for everything. At that, we can adjourn. I hope everybody has an excellent holiday season, and we'll see everybody back in January.
Thanks, everybody.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn the meeting, Mr. Tullis.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Exclusive coverage on the Indian Hill Television Network has been a copyrighted presentation of the Indian Hill High School Video Department.